Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Season 3, Episode 3, Too Many Pinkie Pies. This is the episode in which Pinkie Pie clones, not quite, I'll talk about that later, herself, making inferior duplicates of herself through the mirror of Erised. I mean, the mirror of whatever the heck they call it. And then they have to deal with a swarm o' Pinkies. I remember this badly. But I do have to admit that it's not as bad as I remembered. And I also can explain exactly why I remember it so badly. So let's go through this sequentially, shall we? First and foremost, it's the worst episode ever. Sorry. It's probably one of the middling Pinkie Pie episodes we've had so far. You know, not exactly phenomenal, but with some good elements in it. That would make sense. I agree with that, Weods. Oh yeah, this is by Dave Polsky. I should write that down, because I've been writing those down, and I need to be doing that. I need to be on that. God, I'm so behind today. I blame you guys for being awesome. Wait, that can't be right. No, it totally is. This is written by Dave Polsky. I only have one other episode for him right now. He wrote Over a Barrel, which is the only episode so far that I actively disliked that I've been keeping track of. An episode that was just, what in the world? I think this one isn't that bad, and I'll try to explain why as we go. But still, just... whew. Yeah. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. Where do I begin with this one? Like, okay. Did they ever fix the orange bird? Obviously they never fixed the orange toad, which by itself is kind of terrifying. The beginning of the episode actually posits the Aesop right at the beginning. And the original Aesop, or Aesop if you prefer, is FOMO, which I'll talk about later. Let's circle back to that at some other point. But he does miss at that point, you know, you had fun and I missed out on it. And then she runs around like, oh god, I have to have as much fun with my friends as possible. I don't want to miss out. Hence the point. Again, I'll circle back to that point later, but it is interesting that right at the beginning they do give that Aesop right at the front. So, then she gets a butterfly massage. Am I the only one who thinks that would actually be really relaxing? No, seriously. Like, so imagine the butterflies are all, you know, working in tandem and are working towards the end of flutter, 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 and so you just like, like that just sounds really soothing to me, because it's mostly their wings from what it looks like. And while I don't like bugs, butterflies are okay. We're cool with butterflies. Oh, see, admittedly I'm not ticklish. A fact my niece is continuously upset by. Every now and again, she tells me, okay, I'm going to make you ticklish now. And then she goes, bzzz, and I'm like, okay, and then I pretend to be ticklish. But, anyways. So, yeah. I would, if you're a ticklish person, that would probably be terrible, because it'd be like someone running a feather duster over your entire body. Anyways. So, let's go ahead and hit the biggest point right up front. These are not clones. Now, there's actually been interviews after the fact to address this, but I don't think they're necessary, because even within the sake of the episode, it's very clear these are not clones of Pinkie Pie. They are... well, there's a lot of things we could call them. Cheap Xeroxes, Flanderizations, but I think I'm going to go and use my own terminology, because what these are is bullet points. This is literally in-universe bullet point syndrome. If you bullet pointed Pinkie Pie, you would get these things. And this is exactly why bullet point syndrome is such a negative thing that I fight so much against when it comes to everything in society. Because the moment you start breaking someone down to a series of bullet points, you lose depth and purpose. You lose context and meaning. All you have left is something that doesn't even fully describe them. Right? I like to think she borrowed it from Rarity Weouts. Now, I'll get more to that in a second, but I do think that is very, very clearly shown by the episode. And I wrote down a few specific spots to try and help exemplify this. First of all, even though the voice actress is obviously the same, the way she speaks is different. Her dialogue is written differently. The way she animates is different, and the amount to which she animates is different. Pinkie Pie's always been kind of Looney Tunesy, and that's just kind of a duh thing. But the bullet point syndromes, they don't, and I'm just going to start calling them that, they don't just animate Looney Tunes style. They animate like Daffy Duck at his zaniest. Pretty much 100% of the time. Like, they don't even walk normally. They have to be like, blah, 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 just to showcase that they're constantly zany and bouncy. You get the point. Another thing that they do is they have absolutely no memory for anybody, and they are incredibly inconsiderate. They are actually very selfish. Now, of all of the things you could say about Pinkie Pie, I don't think selfish is actually on that list. She may unintentionally do something selfish, but as soon as she realizes it, she will apologize. This has actually happened. In fact, this happens in this episode. In fact, to even further emphasize this, they bother to put in a scene where Rainbow's like, I'm just going to go ahead and take a rest. And Pinkie Pie says, okay, I'll have the rest of my fun quietly. Whee! And then she very quietly slips into the water, which is insane, but in character. Because she's going very far out of her way to be respectful of her friend. They bother to put this stuff to make it really clear that this is not Pinkie Pie. In fact, they do this so hard, I find myself wondering if this is a meta thing. Like, if there's some out-of-character pushing here against the idea from fans who think that Pinkie Pie is just one of these things, as opposed to what Pinkie Pie is. I don't know if that's true or not. I really don't know if that's true. But it got me thinking as we were going through this one. Oh no, I agree, Savacom. The plan was doomed from the very beginning. I like that idea, Permeus. Shadows, same general shape, none of the detail. It's a good way to put that. I'm going to keep calling them bullet points, but that is good. I like that. So, there's my note in the comments about whether or not this is done for out-of-universe purposes. So this brings me to why I don't like this episode. Her so-called friends. So first, she actually explains in full detail what's going on to her friend, Rainbow Dash, who just says, yeah, sure, whatever. Shortly thereafter, Rainbow Dash actually sees the first shadow, along with her, and then just shrugs it off. Doesn't actually react until a swarm shows up later. Right? So that's the first problem. But then there's the fact that none of them can apparently tell the real Pinkie from the clones, from the shadows, from the cheap Xeroxes. And that actually irritates me. That might have worked a little bit better if this was, a substantially earlier episode in the series. But all this means is that either this is badly written, probably, or that none of her friends actually have any idea who she is. Now, I myself have posited the idea that there is a gradual shift from the beginning of Season 2 until I'm not sure when, I'm still watching for it, of them actually becoming real friends. But it is very clear, if we were to presume that this is not just bad writing, that they're not there yet. However, this reaches peak aggravation when Twilight goes out and everyone's complaining about the Pinkies. And Twilight says, don't worry, I'm going to find a spell. And then she finds a spell, but oh no, we need to know the real one. Remind me to talk about the spell, by the way. So she comes back, she's like, okay. And then Twilight freaking Sparkle walks out and says to everyone, does anyone have any ideas on how to identify the real Pinkie Pie? So the fact that she's asking to begin with is bad, because it means she doesn't know. Then we consider the fact that quite a few of her so-called friends are actually in the crowd who also have no idea. Then the real Pinkie Pie, who, by the way, I want to just make a quick point here. It's always obvious who the real Pinkie Pie is. 100% of the time, it is blatantly obvious which one is the real one. I know this because my niece, when she first saw this 2 years ago, So she's 5. She was 5 at the time. Unerringly could identify the real Pinkie. I actually asked her to see if she was paying attention. And no problems whatsoever. It was so blatantly obvious which one the real Pinkie Pie was. So the real Pinkie Pie shows up and says, hey, I need to talk to you. Twilight says, I'm sorry, I'm not talking to you. Okay. And then while all the shadows are running around being Flanderdizations, I think you're right, Weouts. While the Flanderdizations are running around being stupid, the real Pinkie Pie starts actually thinking and positing, and no one picks up on this. And then there's a scene which irritates me even more, where the real Pinkie Pie is all dejected, and Spike, who is the only one who escapes this, by the way, Spike is like, maybe it's her. That's as close to competent as any of them get, is Spike thinking maybe the real Pinkie is the real Pinkie. Spike is, yeah, that was actually a pretty good Spike moment. He even walks up fairly, he's like, let me guess, you're the real one? And her response, I'm not even sure. And even if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. So why don't you just leave me alone? I'm just going to go put my hoof in the ground. And it's like, but it's so obvious. It's so blatantly obvious. Come on, she's right there. Then, the episode stops pissing me off for a little bit. Because what Pinkie Pie points out is the bleeding obvious. That she actually has depth to her. That she's not a caricature. That she's not a shadow or a Flanderdization or a bullet point. And she says, why don't you just ask something that a bullet point wouldn't do? She, the real Pinkie Pie, comes up with the plan. Which, I'm actually with the plan. It's actually a nicer part of the episode. Because they have to do something really, really boring for a good cause. Now, the intended Aesop of the episode, we're not even really at yet. I'll get to that last. But this, I think, is actually the best Aesop of the episode, because that's life, ain't it? How many times have you had to put up with something really arduous, or tiresome, or boring, or irritating, or frustrating, or hard? But you did it. Either because you had to, because there was some legitimate benefit from it, or because it was worth it, basically. Now, it's not always worth it. That's a separate lesson, which is far more complex. But it is a good thing for people to learn, kids as well as adults, that every now and again, yeah, you gotta put up with the dreck. You do. Even in an ideal world, we would still have to put up with dreck. Because it's not like you can just... That was a terrible snap. Really? Whatever. All the corn to be properly harvested. It's not like you can just get... That was a good snap. Get all the apples off the trees by yourself, right? I mean, applesauce and apple cider are amazing, but there's work to get from point A to point B, right? It's not like... I'll use a personal example. There's a spreadsheet we have for the Lower Walker Theater. That's right, I'm not the real Lord, no! There's a spreadsheet I use for the Lower Walker Theater, and it is apparently really great. Everyone likes it. I like it. It's great for me keeping track of everything. And it took me hours to put together. It was long, slow, boring, arduous, slogging work. But it was worth it. Now we have a spreadsheet to keep everything nice and organized and neat that you guys and I can both reference. You guys for your lines, and me to figure out what needs to go where and what we're still missing. I do legitimately think that's a good lesson for people to learn. I actually already have the spreadsheet set up for Undertale. I've been doing some of the prep work already. Not that we're doing that. So yeah, I think that's a good lesson, and it's basically exactly what this is. You have to watch paint dry for your friends. You have to watch paint dry in order to prove that you're the kind of person who's willing to go that far for, like only the real Pinkie would. And of course, all of the shadows can't. They get distracted by all sorts of stuff. In fact, if you're paying attention, it takes the real Pinkie several seconds after she's won to realize that she can stop staring at the wall because she is so intent on it. Because there is some actual depth to her. Like I said, I'm actually kind of with that part of the episode. I admit getting from point A to point B narratively is a little bit tricky. So I don't have a lot of good critique to give on that one, admittedly. It would have been nice if they couldn't even find the real Pinkie Pie, and they came up with the plan independent of her, rather than them directly talking to the real Pinkie Pie and being unable to identify her. So there you go. There's my quick fix to smooth over the flaws in the episode. Because like I said, the big irritant is the fact that none of them can identify her. There's even this bit where they're being dragged together for the paint thing, and Rainbow comes in and says, "Hey, I found this one," just pawing at the ground, and no one's like, "Aha!" No, they're just like, "Okay, put her with the rest." Anyways. Watching paint dry. God. And as a further addendum, there's another bit where watching paint dry... how do I phrase this? Basically, this is a perfect plan in universe, because this helps to explain something that I said I'd talk about earlier, that these are not people. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. A caricature is a thing I use as an insult, almost always designed to insult writing. The reason I use that is because a character is not a person. It's not a fully fleshed out character. It's a one-note nothing, right? And I usually use that insult in cases when they probably should be more than a one-note nothing. The reason why that's relevant, though, and the reason why this is interesting in universe, is because they are shown to be nothing more than caricatures. Because even on penalty of death, they cannot help but look away. You ever watch Dune or read Dune? Yeah, that's right. We're referencing Dune in My Little Pony. Put your hand in this box. If you withdraw your hand, I will kill you. And then they experience horrific, terrifying pain with their hand in the box. Now, you might think, well, that's horrible, but actually the point is that only a human-type mind, something we would call a person, a sentient, sapient being, has the ability to override animal instinct with thought. It's actually probably one of the more interesting parts of the whole sequence, in my opinion, that whole sequence of events, because you have to prove that you are someone who can think for yourself and therefore override base instincts. Someone who is simply an animal, who cannot think for themselves, will look away from the paint drying, and therefore they are the ones that are returned to the well. Hence, they are literally caricatures. Now, again, this was always the intent out of universe. Like I said, there was an interview about this. I haven't seen Season 8, obviously. However, I find this interesting because, well, we got to talk about this. So, first of all, what would have happened if she had tried to use the spell on Pinkie? I'm going to go ahead and... I'm going to go ahead and give my answer to that really quick. Nothing. I don't think anything would have happened whatsoever if she'd used it on the real Pinkie. Now, they can't say that in the episode because they need to maintain some semblance of threat and risk so that there's something to overcome. But I don't think anything would have happened at all. Because what the spell does is returns the magical energy that was taken from the well back to it. Pinkie has no magical energy from the well. She is not a caricature made of literal well energy like the rest are. So... nothing should have happened. Now, this is another thing that could have been smoothed over by, like, one additional line of dialogue. I don't think it'll affect the real Pinkie, but I'm not sure. There you go. Fixed. Because now, because of the fact that they don't have total certainty, they're unwilling to risk her life. Because that makes sense, right? Even if there's even a 1% chance, then it'd be like, oh, maybe we shouldn't try that. And all of a sudden, problem solved. Now we still have the dilemma. But to further the point, do I think these things qualify as people? No. Do I think these things could qualify as people? That's a little trickier. Some of you may know I have a concept I call droid effect, named after Star Wars. But droid effect is actually something that is very prevalent in real life as well as in fiction. What droid effect is you have to have an intelligent entity that has sufficient intellect to develop and grow sentience and sapience, sufficient time to grow sentience and sapience, and sufficient external experience to develop into a fully sentient and sapient being. These are the 3 key points of droid effect. I know, forgive me for repeating this, I know a lot of you heard me talking about this, but for anybody who's never heard that, that's droid effect in a nutshell. So, do these clones have these 3 points? Well, enough time, debatable. Obviously, if they were allowed to continue to exist, enough time would exist. Enough external experiences, plenty of people to interact with in Ponyville. But they need that critical first point. They need to be sufficiently advanced to begin with in order to be able to develop at all. That's the one I'm not so sure about. What do you guys think? Because, I mean, this is just a judgment call of this. I don't think we really have a lot of evidence to go off of. Yeah, but a character in a video game can speak and make decisions, Dream Whisperer. My niece has a dog, toy dog, that can speak and make decisions. An if-then statement is not sufficiently intelligent. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound dismissive. It's just, when I say sufficiently advanced, I mean way beyond the ability to be like a dog, for example. Now, I suppose I should point out that in a future episode, which I actually rather like, there's this bit where there's a brief gag that one of the Pinkies managed to escape. And that Pinkie seems to be acting, more like a person rather than a caricature. I hate to use a gag as evidence, but if that is, in fact, evidence, then that might legitimately lead itself towards the possibility that they are sufficiently advanced. I'm not sure. I guarantee you the writers didn't think about that. What's funny is I almost guarantee that they did actually consider at least some of the ramifications, because you'll notice that by the end of the episode, they basically swear never to use it again. Hi, Majdi, and hi, Pyro. They say never to use it again, and they seal the thing with a giant frickin' boulder. You remember that? Now, I point that out because that was a good move. In fact, making them seemingly non-intelligent was a good move too. Because otherwise you have just opened up an absolutely massive problem with the fact that you can just go over there and make a duplicate of yourself at any time that is fully sentient and sapient. If they had gone that route with it. So locking that out is probably a really good move as a storyteller, as a world builder. It's kind of like if you could just sort of, I don't know, magically de-age anyone or cure anyone because they've been through the transporter. Oh, wait, they did do that. You get my point, though. But yeah, that is a horrible rabbit hole to just leave that dangling in the background. There are so many ways that that could and should come up if it had worked that way, so I'm glad they didn't go that route. I like to think that that was Tom, personally. Yeah, I doubt it was, but it would be fun to think of that. Yeah, you need to get to the genetic enhancement and the cybernetics, Lieutenant Leroy. You need to really work on it. But yeah, I will agree with Sierra Mike. I think there's not enough as evidence to really justify saying one way or another if these things could become truly sentient and sapient, if droid effect could take effect. So, flip a coin, Who knows? So the last thing I want to talk about is the intended Aesop. Is it Aesop or Aesop? God, I can't remember. Hang on.
Aesop.
Okay, it is Aesop. Okay, we're cool. The intended Aesop is FOMO. This isn't a bad Aesop in its own right, but it's so terribly presented that I imagine most people never even thought about it that way. How many of you know what FOMO even is? Honest question. No judgment. Some of Pinkie's gags made me amused. For the most part, it was just, yeah, okay. Yeah, FOMO is a real human psychological thing. It's something that is a very real problem, mostly amongst children. It's one of the reasons why you have so much trouble getting kids to go to sleep. That's actually when I first learned about it, was when I started having to take care of, newborns. But yeah, FOMO stands for fear of missing out. It is a human psychological concept, which is exactly what it sounds like. Not, not wanting to miss out on things. It's very simple. And pretty much every human being has that to some extent. It is, however, part of a anxiety disorder category, branch, I'm not sure what to properly call that, where it gets even more severe and it actually prevents them from properly functioning and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, the idea here is that Pinkie is presented as someone who has a more anxiety leading towards FOMO, leading towards the fact that she just absolutely cannot deal with the idea that she's missing out on things, and that leads to whole problems. This, of course, then leads to the Aesop. Don't do that. It's okay. It's okay to not actually catch everything. Do not be afraid of missing out. The problem is, it's one of the most basic and badly done Aesops I've ever seen. Like, the Aesop itself is fine, and it's something that needs to be done, but... As a further addendum, as Sierra Mike points out, the other reason FOMO kind of came into my acknowledgement is because a lot of video game companies, looking at you, mobile gaming, actively use FOMO in order to try and make you keep playing and make you keep paying. It's pretty messed up, actually. It's part of the whole predatory concepts thing I've talked about many times. Anywho, reminder that Mobage is Mobage. But yeah, no, it's a very common human thing. Like I said, basically all humans have it to some extent or another. And the core lesson of just try to pull back from that isn't exactly a bad one. Really, it's not. Like, okay, it's okay to miss out on things. It's all right. It's cool. Just chill a little bit. But I do think the other Aesop is more useful. You have to put up with the boring to get to the good. I have literally already taught that lesson to my niece several times. Yes, we have to do this boring thing, but after you do so, we can go do this excellent thing. Oh, okay. You know. My opinion. Oh yeah, and the episode ends on a wah-wah, because of course it does. So let's add a wah-wah counter here. What do you guys think of this episode? I want to pause and discuss the quality of it a little bit, because I've been kind of keeping track of quality of episodes as I go. Just because. Because I'm me, and I'm organized, and I'm weird. I'm sure Twilight would like my organized system. Organizational system, excuse me. What if the boring thing doesn't pay off? Well, that, as we say, is life. But, as I said earlier, that is a different lesson. There are other reasons. There are other things to be learned with regards to whether or not it's worth it, and judging that, and trying to, not waste your time on things, and blah blah frickin' blue. Yeah, true enough, Pyro. I think I'll rate this one at low. It's not bad. I've seen worse in this series so far. But I have to admit, Dave Polsky here is not impressing me with his writing talent so far. Every writer I've been keeping track of so far has written at least one episode that I've really liked, other than Mr. Polsky. There were some decent gags that I can barely remember right now. You and everyone else, period. I've seen a lot of people out and about who are wearing bandanas and the like around their faces, period. Ridiculous. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and chop off.